Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I know I've already started a little bit of my charcoal portrait, but I'm going to kind of go over a few things for some of you for the first time. For others, it should be a little bit of a review, but we're going to go through it over here. Again, I've given you in your supplies, I've given you vine charcoal. The vine charcoal is basically burnt wood. It's a specific type of wood that's been burned, but it is in these small wooden sticks. What I like to do is I like to break those sticks up, and I like to work with a piece that's only about 2 to 3 inches big. I like to hold it from the side like this. I don't use it like a pencil point. I use it so it's basically, perpendicular, not perpendicular, horizontal and parallel to the picture plane. So I'm getting a lot of surface touched in there. With that, I've also given you something called a kneaded eraser. That kneaded eraser looks like a piece of gray bubble gum. We've used this before if you did charcoal, but if you haven't, you take it out of the package, you can stretch it out, work it over just like this, and basically it is the right eraser for charcoal. One of the reasons why we use this particular one is because when you erase, it really leaves very little of those little things you have to sort of waft away. And because the charcoal we're using is very smudgy and it comes off very easily, we really don't want to have a lot of little eraser shavings all over our picture that are going to end up getting sort of like smudged up with all the rest of our work. So this is the eraser that we use for charcoal. At this point, I'm going to want you guys to basically just use this eraser for the whole thing. Before we really get started into the charcoal part, what I want to do is I want to get in there and I want to erase my grid lines. Now, for my particular example, I kind of made my grid lines a little bit darker than I really wanted them to be. I made them dark so you guys could see it on the projection, even though it was pretty light. But at this point, I want to kind of make those things disappear. And when I erase, I want to sort of erase all over. All erasers, all plastics are made out of a byproduct of oil. And being such, sometimes even with an eraser it may leave a little residue, which vine charcoal is very sensitive to sticking to. And what we want to do is we don't want to kind of erase perfectly with this thing, because if we do, what's going to end up happening is that it's going to kind of leave a little snail trail that gets picked up later on. It'll look like there's a waffle iron on your face. Now, I already started working a little bit on my picture. You can see I started with the forehead. Again, as a reminder, for those of you who already know, we are going to start with the forehead. The hair is going to be the last thing we do, because the hair basically, it smudges quite a bit. The charcoal gets everywhere. It's going to be the part of your picture that has the most sort of darkness. So for the most part, we're going to leave that part alone to begin with. For my particular picture, I've decided to treat the bow on her head as the hair, because I know you guys really want to just see me do the face and go through all of those things as we are. So I've gotten rid of my grid lines. I've broken my little piece of charcoal down to a couple of inches. I've got my gummy eraser. I'm pretty much set to go. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the forehead. And why I'm going to do the forehead first is really because it's a nice even area. And what I want to do is I want to work from the top down so that I don't end up sort of putting my hand down in an area that I already worked on. I wouldn't want to work on the nose or the mouth now, because if I did so, I'm just going to lay my hand on top of it and smudge the heck out of it. It really doesn't make any sense to do. So it's a good area for us to start. What we want to find when we start working on the forehead is we want to get even coverage. And whether you're going dark or whether you're going light, what you want to find is you want to get nice and even coverage, meaning that when you're working with your charcoal, that it's going down relatively smoothly, and then you then can come in and start blending it in with your fingers relatively smoothly. If you put it on really, really rough, it will always stay really, really rough. And here in like the more shaded area of her face, see I'm putting down a bunch of charcoal and I'm trying to work it into the paper with my finger. Again, with the finger, I think the fingertip works the best to blend with. I would not use a blending stump on this unless you're in an area like around the eye or part of the facial features that you really can't reach with your finger. But otherwise, the little bit of grease that's on your finger actually works quite well. to sort of press the paper, charcoal into the paper. And it really is a nice smooth surface, especially on the forehead where you don't want to have streaks or lines or anything else like that. So I'm starting off with those basic sort of shadows that you see over there. I'm working the charcoal into the paper, and my first pass, I'm really sort of pressing down with my finger to blend it, pressing down hard, but the second time around, when I'm trying to make things a little bit darker, I'm just kind of dragging my finger on it. Now, if your fingers are really, really clean, or you use like a hand moisturizer, your fingers are going to work like erasers. So sometimes I use a clean finger to sort of clear off a little bit of charcoal and get some of the light areas back. But right now, even with my dirty finger, what I like to do with that sometimes is get some of those really, really light grays. And when we looked at the portraits that were done in the past, I think that you could tell the really good ones from the sort of average ones is by how many different shades of gray the artist, that particular student, got. The more shades of gray, the more subtle variations, the more of that light gray that they get, the more realistic it looks. So you want to search and you want to try to find those things as much as possible. Those little subtle little changes from one part to the other, that gives us a description of form, it gives us a description of weight and mass. It really is, you know, when we look at a photograph, we see thousands upon thousands. Our eyes are trained to see millions of subtle little differences in light and dark. And the more we can pick up with that on a drawing, the more realistic it's going to look. So before I start messing around with the eye or any of the, I guess, the sort of more exciting parts to shade or draw, I really want to invest that time in my forehead and really get my fingers dirty, get a real feel for what I'm doing. And I like to try to leave an area finished before I move away from it. I don't want to have to come back up top here later on because, you know, basically I'll just be smudging out something that I already did. So like if I don't finish the forehead now, what am I going to do? The eyes, the nose, and then come back up over here? So it's a good thing to get all that stuff done. Now as I start transitioning over to the eye and working on the eye, before I start doing the actual like detail parts of the eye, I really want to get a certain level of, you know, basic shades of gray in there. That way I don't have to come in and put them in later. And especially on this side, it happens to be the darker side of her picture, which is not really that dark to begin with. But this shadowed area, this orbital bone area going into the brow is really a little bit darker. So I'm going to have to get some of those shadings. And one of the things that I'm going to tell you about working around the eyes is try to think of yourself as if you're touching your actual face and try to blend following the contours of your face. So like when I'm working around this area, you can see I'm sort of pushing the charcoal to kind of go around that part of her face. Right now, you know, for her particular picture, you know, it probably wasn't the best example to choose for you guys because she has really, really light eyebrows. They're barely there. So what I really want to get here is I want to get a little bit of the sense that there are a little bit darker over there. It's not really much darker. And then what I'm going to carefully do is I'm going to come back and just add just a little bit of texture. Now her particular brows are not going to be great examples for you because you're all going to have much, much darker eyebrows than she does, whether your hair is light or dark. But what I want to do is I want to just hint at a little bit of the texture of the hair. I'm really just using the edge of my piece of charcoal just to kind of hint it a little bit, so if someone was looking up really close they could see a little bit of those marks. Now I'm not going to blend those things out, I'm just going to kind of leave them a little rough, and for you it's going to be the same kind of thing. We want to kind of use those last little marks as a touch-up, and if you happen to have light marks in your eyebrows, this is a place where you could take your kneaded eraser, sort of squeeze it up and pinch it into a little corner. I'm going to feel pretty decent about what I've got here so far. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of zoom down in here for you guys so we can really just focus on the eye right now, and I'm going to do a few little facial features. So I think we'll just kind of adjust the camera really quick. And you can see some of the light little marks that I put in there, just hinting at her hairs. You can see I've kind of done the shading in around the orbital bone over here, just a touch a little darker right in that corner over there. And again, when I'm blending around the eye, I'm sort of moving my fingers around the eye. Now I'm going to go into my picture actually and zoom in a little bit too, so we can kind of really get into this stuff. We got one eye, we got the other. Now, I'm never really in a position where I'm telling you guys to outline stuff or to make up stuff as you're going along. But the eye is one of the few places where you do get a little bit of a clean, crisp edge. It is a little bit of an area where you get a little bit of an outline. And that's all in the crease of your eyelids, mattering on how your picture depicts that. Now, we're not working with a pencil, we're working with a piece of charcoal. What I want to do is I started with that little kind of light outline, and then I'm just dragging my finger over this and redrawing it. Now that first time I'm probably going to wipe a bunch of that stuff off, but I want to get some charcoal into the paper, so I got to press it down in. Second time I'm going to go just a little bit more carefully, and I want to kind of get it to the point where I'm not really going to go back in there and touch it up too much. I might just lightly drag my finger over this part just to kind of lighten up that end, and on this end too, just a little bit. At this point, if you happen to have a situation where you're like really having a tough time getting in there and your fingers might be a little bit too big, this is where you could take out a blending stump. Now, I would never use the blending stump for the area of the skin around the eye, but for things that you can't reach, like for example right in here where you might have a really fine line that you just can't blend in well with your fingers without smudging, this is where I would use it. But I would use this blending stump very sparingly. It's not something that I would do a whole lot of. From here I'm going to get into the eyelashes. Now, I don't want to get in there and start drawing actual lashes, not just yet. I want to get the basic shading of what's going on. And for the most part, where those lashes are coming out from and that ridge of the sort of lid, it is a little bit darker. So number one priority is to get in there and get a little bit of that color. I'm going to drag my finger over that just one more time just to kind of push some of that charcoal in. And then I'm going to look in my picture and really try to find a darker edge in there. Again, might be a spot where I can do just a little bit with the blending stump just to kind of push a little bit of charcoal in. But again, that's one of the few places I would actually do this. From there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the eye itself. Now, I've already gotten some charcoal in the eye over here, but that works because the white of my eye isn't quite white. I want to look into those areas, and I want to kind of see, starting with like the corner of the eye over here, which happens to be like where the tear duct is a little bit darker. So I'm going to get a little bit of value in there. May take my blending stump and kind of shape that up a little bit. Cases where you might not like exactly the shape, I got to clean that up a little bit. I'll take my gummy eraser, I'll pinch it into a nice edge just like that, and I'll come in and kind of use that to sort of clean things up and shape things up. I'm going to start working on the actual iris part of the eye. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to start first of all by, her eye has some lightness and some darkness in it, but I'm going to get in there first and just kind of fill it in. I like to have like a little base coat, something that I can really kind of go back into and work into with the eraser and charcoal, so that I have the ability to sort of draw a little bit with my eraser. You never want to press down so hard that what's happening is that you're kind of making a ton of dust. If you're making a lot of dust on your picture, you got to take it easy. You got to ease it back a little bit and not press down so hard. Right now I'm going to do a little shaping up and just kind of bringing in a little bit more value to the darkest areas. which is on the top part of the eye. And there's a little bit that kind of goes through it. We've got some reflection stuff going on there. I don't know how far we want to go in detail wise, and then just kind of again in a few places I've used this. See, my shape of my eye has kind of gotten a little geeked. This is where I pinch a little part from my kneaded eraser, and I get in there and I kind of clean those little edges up. I've got a little white reflection in there. Take a little pinch. Kind of come in there and add that little bit. If I have to shape that up with my kneaded, I'll take that kneaded eraser, kind of lighten up some of those reflected areas. And I think that's all I really want to get out of that part of the eye. I'm going to get in here with a little bit of the charcoal that's on my blending stump. I'm going to use that to kind of bring in some of that very light gray that you see in there. Hard to reach places. This is the only place again that I would use my sort of blending stump. Otherwise I'll try to do as much as I possibly can with my fingertips. At this point now I can put just a little touch of charcoal in here in some of the areas where I'm going to have lashes. And ladies, don't go eyelash crazy. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of touch up a couple areas and get a little hint of lashes in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that point on my little blending stump to kind of drag out. And that's really pretty much it for what I do right there. Just a quick little touch up. Then we've got the shading that's happening underneath the eye. Again, when I'm blending this, I'm kind of dragging my finger in the same direction as the contours of the face are going. And you know, again, you can always work light and make things darker. And I'm kind of pulling that little tone this way. Got another little tiny crease that's in there. How do I get that crease? I drag through there. When I feel like I have what I need as far as the overall charcoal, how do I make one edge a little bit darker and something look a little bit more pronounced? Well, I pinch an edge onto my little gummy eraser, and then I use that very carefully, kind of get in there. And sort of accentuate that edge a little bit more. If I feel like I got to get in there just a little bit more, I'll use my blending stump, and that'll be pretty much that for that part of the eye. Get a little bit of that shading happening on this side of the face. I'm going to move to a slightly quicker. I'm just going to keep that out just a second. Start working on the other eye. Go right over here and get another eye for you. And I'm just going to try to work just a little bit quicker here so that we get a little more bang for our buck. That ridge for the lid, drag my finger across it, like redraw with my finger, just kind of push it into the paper just to kind of get it in there. If I need to come back, this is the time when I'll sort of come back and add a little bit more darkness. Like in the center of the fold, I feel like it needs it a little bit more. Another place where, one of the few places again, I try to use my blending stump if necessary. And kind of lighten that up just by wiping it a little bit. If I need to shape something up or shape up an edge in here, this is where I'd come in with a little bit of my eraser and adjust. The base colors in there, the base values that you need to get in there for your lid. And work from the corner out. Again, if you are a righty, do the left eye first. Work your way around the other part. start with this eye. This eye is lighter than the other one because of the lighting on the picture. And nevertheless, I'm going to start with just filling it in to begin with to give it a little bit tone, something like a base to work on. I'll kind of blend it in just quickly, just trying to get a little bit of that value in there. Get in there and try to shape up my edges just a little bit. First, I think I have about, oh, I got another 5 minutes. I'm going to finish this eye through here and get a little bit of my reflection in there. One of the things you may not see in this video is the amount of time that I spend looking at the photograph. I'm going to try to spend almost as much time looking at the photograph as I do the actual picture. Shaping it up. I'll try to use my kneaded eraser to get the shape up of the pupil. And just don't think of your eraser as just something there to fix mistakes. It is a drawing tool, and it is there to help you, reshape and form your drawing in the way that you need it to be. Again, I'm going to take my kneaded eraser, just a touch in there. Pinch them again into a little shape. I think that'll have to do. I'll give you one more minute and then I'm going to stop the feed for today. I guess I'll have to do the nose and the mouth tomorrow. I'm not as fast as I used to be, I guess. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I thought I would work a little faster and do a little bit more, but whatever, I'm getting old. What can I tell you? I'm getting a little slow. But, this is probably a maximum the pace you should be working on. And see that in a 30-minute session, what I'm going to do is maybe just get a couple eyes done. Just kind of move that out there so we can see. Now there she is. Little Athenas says hello. Tomorrow we'll do the nose and the mouth. Hope you guys are all doing well at home. Everybody's healthy and happy. Please don't move on to the charcoal until I've got the opportunity to kind of look at your drawings and make sure we double check them. Please send me updates. You can always send me updates in the chat, and I will be posting the different parts of the face as I do them throughout the thing, so you'll have them as reference points.